Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. First of all, let me start by apologizing. I was under the impression that the appeals would be heard Monday, given that that was the information that was shared by a lot of people, and that's not the case. Actually, the appeals are going to be heard today, or are being heard today, Tuesday. It sounds like a lot has progressed from what I'm being told. Now, we have one article so far that has been released, and that is from Infobay. Infobay, in my opinion, as much as I dread using Infobay, it's because I feel like they've been compromised by just everybody's involvement between Rogelio Norris's attorney and anybody else at this point, that their reporting might be a little bit swayed, but they did release an article today. So we're going to go ahead and review it, and I'll give my commentary and thoughts as I'm reviewing it with you guys. All right. Shout out to you guys for supporting my channel, and let's get into this. All right. Liam's death, key hearing for 5 defendants. They will appear before Chamber 6 of the National Criminal and Correctional Court on Tuesday to discuss their appeals to the prosecution and preventative detention. The 5 defendants charged with the death of former One Direction singer Liam Payne will appear on Tuesday at about 9 a.m. in courtroom 6 of the National Criminal and Correctional Court to hear appeals against the indictments and preventative detentions in the case of Brian Paez and Ezequiel Pereira. Okay, so we know who these 2 individuals are. They're being accused of supplying the drugs. It should be remembered that on December 29th, the head of the Criminal and Correctional Court, number 34, the judge, Laura Bernard, prosecuted the 5 accused of the death of Liam Payne, who on October 16 fell from the balcony of his room on the 3rd floor of Casa Sur, located in the Palermo neighborhood of the city of Buenos Aires, Argentina. At the time, the judge prosecuted businessman Rogelio Norris, alias Roger, represented by lawyer Rafael Libarona, for the crime of negligent homicide, but without an arrest warrant, although he was embargoed for 50 million pesos and was prohibited from leaving the country. Gilda Martin, the hotel manager who was present on the day of Payne's death, and the last person accused by the prosecutor in the case, Andres Madres, was charged with manslaughter by the judge and seized the property for the same amount as Norris. The same was charged to the hotel manager Esteban Grassi. It just seems like there should have been so many more people charged in this. Just my opinion. However, the former waiter Baez and the hotel employee Pereira were given preventative detention and summoned to appear in court within 24 business hours. The former waiter was arrested on January 3rd, and the other accused turned himself into the court 3 days later. They didn't, honor the court's request of the 24 business hours, by the way. The 2 were accused of having sold drugs to the former One Direction member. Although Paez denies it, he says he gave them to him and that he has proof of it, according to what this media outlet was able to find out. The situation of the former waiter is complex. At the end of January, the Justice Department determined that he should remain in prison. The decision was made by Chambers B of the Criminal and Correctional Court of Buenos Aires, made by judges Ricardo Pinto and Hernan Lopez, who are also part of Chambers 6, which is analyzing the appeals of this case. It should be noted that at the time he has been detained since January 3rd is not disproportionate to the state of the proceedings, in which a ruling has already been issued, nor to the amount and matter of fulfillment of the eventual sanction that may be imposed in this case, the ruling states. This is how he arrived at the hearing on Tuesday, which his lawyer, Fernando Madeo Facete, will present arguments to improve his procedural situation. Now let's get to Rogelio Norris's approach. Libarona argument to defend Norris is based on a question of objective liability. In her indictment, the judge pointed to the businessman as a guarantor of Liam in the country, in line with what was raised with prosecutor Andres Madre through telephone experts' reports and the testimony of Jeff Payne, Liam's father. Norris, on the other hand, denied being the manager in his representation to the court and counterattacked with the defamation suit against Payne Sr., who everything, according to the lawyer, is about personal responsibility. There is a very big confusion between the position of guarantor of a person and the legal duty that each of us has as a principle of self responsibility to take care of ourselves. Now, let me stop right here. I had a pretty heated debate with somebody, and I had given the example of this, right? Say that it wasn't Rogelio Nores, but Liam Payne's dad, who was in Argentina. Say that he was leaving him unsupervised, you know, Liam Payne's dad. Wouldn't Liam Payne's dad also carry the same type of weight of responsibility as Rogelio? I think what people are saying is that regardless who the person is, whether it's Liam Payne's dad or Rogelio Nores, right? And because Liam Payne's dad was not there, it's like, Rogelio Nores carries a huge responsibility because he walked in knowing what was going on. Just like Cassidy, just like all these other individuals. And even Liam Payne's dad, who wasn't there, but if he was there, he would have had some level of responsibility to something. And it was a debate that I was having with somebody, a conversation. But I said, let me ask people in the channel, how do you guys think? If the shoe were in the other foot, with Rogelio Nores, wasn't in the country and it was Liam Payne's dad, wouldn't people be holding Liam Payne's dad to the same standard of accountability? I think so. Just like right now, when we have a lot of questions about Kate Cassidy, we would be holding, we are asking questions of Kate Cassidy because she was well aware of everything that was happening based on the Rogelio Norris lawsuit. Like, she knew what was up with her man that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. And she left. Oh, should she also be charged and held responsible? Was she also included in the emails? What about Rogelio Norris's assistant of the manager, right? Lula Miranda. What about her? How come she's not upon the ones that are being charged, knowing what was going on? If we're talking about guarantor, doesn't that stretch out to a lot of other individuals in this case? To me, I think if Liam Payne's dad was in Argentina, he would have been supervising his son. I get the impression that he would have, that he knew the seriousness of what was happening. This is why I think that um, Liam Payne's dad is also a victim. The families are victims of what has happened to, right? Because if they knew everything that was going on, Rogelio knew what was going on. They were shopping for different psychiatrists, and Jeff Payne, he didn't know. He didn't have access to his son. He didn't have a phone number. He's over here respecting his son because he's thinking, my son is trying to get sober. But in reality, he wasn't, because these care team people were drinking, enabling him, allowing him to have a bunch of things. And they're not medical professionals, right? Like, I don't think that's what we're saying. We're saying that if you had a duty and you knew in the emails and the financial, and you're all up in there, even though he wrote an email talking about, I'm walking away from this. I don't want to have anything to do with this, but yet, and still, you were there. For Rogelio Norris's attorney to make this argument that there's a big confusion between the position of guarantor and a person and the legal duty that each of us have as a principle of self-responsibility to take care of ourselves. That to me is BS, because you would have to consider the fact that there was knowledge of Liam Payne having an issue, a problem that needed higher level of care. This word of higher level of care, for those of us like myself, I'm a social worker, that I've worked in the field. When I hear higher level of care, that means either a treatment center, a facility, that means multiple parties being involved. That means a treatment plan, an extensive one at that, when it's a higher level of care. Okay, because there's different levels to it. So I think that when you're aware that somebody needs a higher level of care based on what the psychiatrist said, then this whole argument of the principle of self responsibility doesn't exist anymore. Here's an example. Okay, again, self-responsibility to take care of ourselves, like as the attorney said. Here's an example. If you're at a party, and I've used this example before, all right, and your friend is taking the keys away from you, they're wanting to drive, and you can see that your friend is clearly intoxicated. There is no self responsibility there, right? If there are multiple people that are aware that you're about to get into this car and you're about to drive off to either A, you can hurt yourself, kill yourself or kill somebody else or be fined, whatever the consequence may be, right? This idea of self responsibility to take care of selves or of ourselves goes out the window if we have knowledge that you're about to get in this car and you've been drinking, you had too many margaritas or tequilas or whatever, you know what I mean? And I have to step in and take those keys. That's how I see this argument being dismantled, that you can't argue self-responsibility when the guarantors, the people around you, are well aware that you had these issues. Let's keep going. Payne stayed at Casa Sur Hotel at midnight on October the 13th and died 3 days after falling from the balcony of his third floor room. The autopsy results concluded that he died due to multiple traumas and internal and external hemorrhages. Toxicology tests on urine, blood, and vitreous humor samples were key. Alcohol, cocaine, and antidepressants were found. The results of toxicology studies revealed that in the moment prior to his death and for at least 72 hours, Payne only had traces of polyuse of alcohol, cocaine, and a prescription antidepressant in his body. Because if you read, the conversation between what the psychiatrist was recommending, like it was said that he wasn't supposed to be doing any type of antidepressant with any polyuse of anything, right? That's that part where that self-responsibility, if you have somebody that's struggling, goes out the window, because you can't expect that person to figure things out. There's no self-responsibility there. Liam Payne trusted that the people around him had his best interest. And I'm sure that it was probably very difficult to manage that, right? Because nobody wants to be in a position of having to play the role of interventionist in this. Nobody wants to. It's a difficult role to play it, but it's one that I think in anybody's right mind we needed it. Right? The experts ruled out any type of self-harm or third-party intervention, opening up the possibility that Payne fell unconscious. I struggle with that. Especially because of the DNA fingers and stuff like that. Did he faint and then fall? Was it climbing over and then fall? I don't know how I feel about this. The victim did not adopt a reflex posture to protect himself from so for the moment, it can be inferred that he may have fallen in a state of semi or total consciousness. They said that the phenomenon of the lack of defense or conservation reflex in the fall, together with other relevant data due to its consumption, allowed us to conclude that Payne was not fully conscious or was going through a state of noticeable decrease or abolition of consciousness at the time of the fall. For the investigators, this situation would rule out the possibility of a conscious or voluntary act on the part of the victim, since the state which he was in, he did not know what he was doing, nor could he understand it. By the way, there's like a lot of typos in the article, and it might be because of the translation. I'm not really sure, but just a heads up. So they put in here the assistance with addictions problems and whatnot. And I think that's the problem, that it's like we've kind of written this story off to be this, he's a rock star, movie star, celebrity star, whatever star, boy band, and therefore that was his issue. And the reality is that we really don't know, other than what's been put out there by media. I personally don't feel like we can reduce the situation to this. I feel like we have to understand how complex the situation is. And the characters that are around. In my opinion, Liam was put in a compromising situation in which there could be people that benefited from him being gone. Multiple people. I can't get that out of my head, guys. Like, I have done 70 plus videos of this. And I still, I'll sit down and I'll think about this. And who my sister, who was a One Direction fan, this isn't about being a fan. This is about justice, right? Um, we've talked a little bit about this, and I kind of shared how I really there's something about the way in which this happened just doesn't make sense to me. And this isn't on a conspiracy theory or anything. It's on a something in my gut feels off about this. And I am hopeful. Shout out to the fans in Argentina. Shout out to everybody on Twitter and X. I'm hopeful that justice prevails, because there's a part of me that feels like Rogelio Nortes might get away with this shit. Oh, let me stop because this is getting too deep. And I'm just recording this. I don't know. As I was recording this and editing it, I was made aware that Rolling Stone dropped another article today, and that Maya Hendry was interviewed. So I have to do another video that's like a different reaction, because I've not read the article. I'm being told what it is, and people are having thoughts about it already. So I'm gonna read it in a pre-recorded video for the first time, and you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comments. Just stay tuned, okay? And again, we're still waiting to hear back about what's happening with the appeal. Where are we at? A lot of us are wanting to know what the news is.